Welcome back, Patriots. I'm Ron Kern, and thanks for tuning in to episode number 10, hey, double digits, of the Patriot Power Freedom Files, your go-to source for an exhilarating journey into the heart of American history. I'm super excited that you're here, ready to dive into the untold stories of remarkable individuals, epic battles, and pivotal events that sculpted the birth of the greatest country on earth, the United States. Now, each one of these videos is designed to be short, yet informative, as I understand everybody's busy, and I want to deliver a wealth of historical insight without taking up too much of your time. I'm not sure what happened with our last episode, but the views were crazy high, higher than normal. So thank you guys so much for commenting, liking, and sharing it. For my new viewers, a super brief introduction. My fifth great-grandfather, Peter Kern, fought in the American Revolution in Pennsylvania. I'm currently the Idaho State Society president for the Idaho Sons of the American Revolution, and my wife and I teach the U.S. Constitution and the American Revolution at a homeschool co-op. And as a veteran myself, the American Revolution is my passion. And having the blessing to share it with you, it just makes my heart sing. All right, so let's get started with episode number 10. In the tumultuous years leading up to the American Revolution, one name echoed through the colonies, stirring the hearts and minds of the American people. That person's name is Thomas Paine. Heard of him? At the center of the revolutionary storm stood Paine's seminal work, Common Sense, which was a 50-page pamphlet that would prove to be a catalyst for change and an essential document in the fight for independence. Published on this day today, January 10th in 1776, Common Sense emerged as a powerful call to arms, challenging the very foundations of monarchy and advocating the radical idea of American independence. I mean, back then, that was not the norm. That was a radical American being independent, right? Thomas Paine's writing style was both eloquent and accessible. He made the complex arguments of the time very easy to understand to a wide audience. And as the pamphlet circulated, it ignited a spark that would eventually fuel the flames of the revolution. Common Sense spread like wildfire, reaching the hands of everyday colonists and political elites alike. He used persuasive language and quite compelling arguments against why British rule shouldn't be happening, and his positions resonated with readers across the 13 colonies. The pamphlet's influence was quite profound, pushing many Americans who were previously undecided or a bit hesitant to fully embrace the cause of independence. What happened to Paine after the war is crazy, which I'll get into in just a minute, so hang tight. One key aspect of Common Sense lies in its ability to unite disparate groups of colonists under one common banner. Paine skillfully dismantled the idea of monarchy and also said hereditary succession, no good. He presented a vision of the republic where citizens actually had the power to govern themselves. Remember when we could do that? This vision struck a chord with those who sought a break from British rule, transcending regional and social diversions to create a shared sense of purpose among the colonists. While many of you might be familiar with the impact of Common Sense on the revolutionary spirit, few may not know that Thomas Paine refused to profit from its publication. In a remarkable act of selflessness, Paine dedicated any proceeds from the sale of Common Sense to supply the American troops in their struggle for independence. So any money that came from his pamphlet, he gave right back to the troops. And I think this lesser known detail, it adds an extra layer of significance to Common Sense. It shows that Paine was very committed not only to the power of the ideas, but also to the tangible support of the Army and the revolutionary cause. Comparing his pamphlet in today's terms, it would easily be New York Times' #1 top-selling book, because within months it had sold 150,000 copies, which back then was completely unheard of. And by the end of the revolution, over 500,000, 500,000 copies had been sold. Now, that may not sound like a lot now in today's numbers, but back then, the entire population of the colonies were 2.5 million. So 20% of the country actually owned a copy of his pamphlet. George Washington even had it read to his troops right before they crossed the Delaware, which in part convinced them to stay in the Army just a little bit longer. And if you know what happened, after they crossed, they won in Trenton, and then they won again in Princeton. And it was a big turning point of the war. So it was a big deal keeping the Army together, and common sense had a part in doing that. Common sense stands as a testament, really, to the transformative power of words during a pivotal moment in history. Its influence reverberated throughout the colonies, and it sparked a newfound determination for independence, and helped shape the course of the American Revolution. As we reflect on this revolutionary masterpiece, let us not forget the selfless commitment of its author, who sought not only to inspire change, but to actively contribute to the cause that would ultimately shape the destiny of a new nation. There are lots of good points and quotes in Common Sense, but I chose 3 that really stand out to me and ones that I really like. And the first one is, "The more men have to lose, the less willing they are to venture." How true is that? The second one is, "Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one." And lastly, "Of more worth is one honest man to society and in the sight of God than all of the crowned ruffians that ever lived." Paine followed up Common Sense with publishing The American Crisis, which I bet you have heard at least the start of it, which is this: "These are the times that try men's souls." Another famous quote, or well-known quote from it, is, "Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." After the war, he was in the crosshairs quite a bit when he wrote The Age of Reason, which, well, it fractured religion. It caused a big stir, not only in the United States, but also in England and France. And heaven forbid, and shame on him, he criticized George Washington for not rescuing him when he was a prisoner in France. And as with Common Sense, he stirred the pot. But this time, not in a good way. Thomas Paine died June 8th in 1809 in New York City at the age of 72. And after his death, Paine's body was brought to New Rochelle, but the Quakers would not allow it to be buried in their graveyard, as per his last will. So his remains were buried under a walnut tree on his own farm. In 1819, an English radical journalist named William Cobbett, who in 1793 he published a hostile continuation of the life of Thomas Paine, he actually dug up Thomas Paine's grave and his bones and transported them back to England with a good positive intention to give Paine a heroic reburial on his native soil. But this never came to pass. The bones were still among Cobbett's effects when he himself died, over 15 years later. So his bones were sitting in a trunk in a house, vacant, and there's no really confirmed story about what happened to them after Cobbett died. But various people have claimed throughout the years to own parts of Paine's remains, such as his skull and his right hand. A man that was so instrumental in the foundation of our country not only died somewhat obscure, very few people actually even attended his funeral, but even his bones were